Welcome to Tech in the Right Direction, the podcast. This week, I'll be speaking with Seth Earley on the Mentors That Make a Difference segment. Seth is an expert with 20 plus years of experience in knowledge strategy, data, and information architecture, search based applications, and information findability solutions. Seth has worked with a diverse roster of Fortune 1000 companies, helping them to achieve higher levels of operating performance by making information more findable, usable, and valuable through integrated enterprise architectures supporting analytics, e-commerce, and the customer experience applications. Seth is a sought-after speaker, writer, and influencer. He is the author of the AI-Powered Enterprise from LifeTree Media, which was released in April of 2020. In 2021, the book received the Axiom Business Book Silver Medal in the Artificial Intelligence Robotics Algorithms category. His writing has appeared in IT Professional magazine from the IEEE, where, as a former editor, he wrote a regular column on data analytics and information access issues and trends. He has also contributed to the Harvard Business Review, CMS Wire, CEO World, TechTarget, eCommerce Times, and Analytics Magazine, Journal of Applied Marketing Analytics, and he co-authored Practical Knowledge Management from IBM Press.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. Well, let's get started. So, Seth, I'm so excited to have you on our Mentors That Make a Difference segment of the show. So, thank you so much for being an ally for women in technology. Tell us more about you.
Sure. So I am a founder and CEO of a professional services company called Early Information Science. We've been in business for about 25 years. And throughout that time, we've always worked in the information management, information architecture space. Our catchphrase is we make information more usable, more findable, and more valuable. And we work with a lot of Fortune 1000 companies and those types of initiatives.
Very nice. Information is so valuable right now, and there is so much information out there, right? I mean, everything, even in our homes, from our refrigerators sometimes to our doorbells, has information and data. So, data is so critical, but using it correctly is so important, right?
That's true. And, there's a lot of people complain about information overload. And
Mhm.
I like to also say it's filter failure, right? In other
Mhm.
words, we're not filtering it. We get overloaded because we're not necessarily filtering it in a way that makes it usable and makes it easy to find stuff. And, when you go to a website and you're overwhelmed with choices, what do you do? You go to another site that has a little bit
Mhm.
better way of organizing that information and helps you get to your answer faster. So, part of it is just saying what's the right information for someone given the task that is at hand and given their objective. And so if you look at information across the information ecosystem from that perspective, you can make it a lot easier for people to find what they need when they need it. But you're right. It's just, from social media and all the different applications that we have, it's hard to find stuff even on your phone these
It
days.
really is. And there's so many ways of communicating that I have to look at, email. I have 3 different email addresses I have to look at. I have to look at Teams. I have to look at WhatsApp. I have to look at,
Right,
so it gets
right.
exhausting. It really does.
Yeah, it is. It's a challenge. And with all that fragmentation of channels and information sources, it's not going to get easier. People try to add, cognitive AI and chatbots to this, and they think that's going to solve the problem. But those systems, those tools are only as good as the information that they are trying to
Mhm.
access, right? I like
Mhm.
to say chatbots are a channel. They're a channel to content and knowledge and information, and you really need to have it well organized in order for those systems to work.
That's so true. And, knowing what data is meaningful and then acting on it and executing on it is so critical for business today.
Absolutely. And that's the issue is what information do you need for what process. And a lot of executives have been burned by information management projects that don't deliver the results. Like there's
Mhm.
lots of digital transformations going on, and they spend a lot of money on these things, or people are investing in artificial intelligence. And the challenge is, where do you get your bang for the buck, right? And how do you
Mhm.
justify ROI? And there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and noise and nonsense in the marketplace. So it really does make it very difficult for business leaders to make those decisions and correctly allocate their limited resources to get value for the business.
And I'm guessing your company helps them do that, correct?
That would be true.
Yep. Yep.
That's
That's
right.
great. That's
Yeah,
great.
we
We
work in
need that help.
we work in the area of making the information easier to consume and to manage. And we structure that information correctly, whether it's knowledge and content or customer information or product data, product catalogs, e-commerce sites, marketing technologies, marketing campaign management, all of those different types of systems all rely on kind of a foundation of what we call information architecture, which is really the structure for that information, right? Just, and you need an architect to help with that. Just like
Mhm.
if you were building a house, you wouldn't just start, digging holes and pouring foundations, right? You would hire an architect, or you'd get a design, and then you would execute from that. And it's the same thing with information. When we build our information house, we need to design it based on our needs and based on our requirements. So very analogous in terms of, how we look at the physical world. We kind of need to think about some of the same metaphors in the information world.
I love that analogy because that makes so much sense. You don't just take the data and just look at it. You have to have that architect design the flow of the data,
Right.
where it's coming from, what sources are important to you, and then start filtering it through those. So that's
That's
great.
Yeah,
That's
that's
great.
correct. That's exactly right. Yeah, you can't just point your AI to it or just import it into some algorithm and
Mhm.
magic happens. You have to be very intentional about it.
Right, right. No, that's great. So we really need your types of services today for organizations. So this podcast is focused on bridging the employment
Mhm.
pay and culture gap for women in technology. What are you seeing in the industry today?
Well, it's interesting. I have limited visibility into what's going on in many organizations in
Hmm.
terms of our clients, but I am seeing a lot of women in leadership roles in terms of the projects that we are involved in. So, we many times will have women who are running these projects, managing these projects, sponsoring these projects, at the executive leadership level. And so, we've seen a lot of diversity in terms of our
Hmm.
client base, whereas maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and I do have that long time horizon,
Hmm.
it would mostly be the white male cohort, right?
Hmm.
But I think there's a lot more diversity these days, at least from what I'm seeing in our Fortune 1000 customers. In terms of, our organization, we have a number of women who are, our director of solution architecture is a woman who, Chantel, she's wonderful. We
Hmm.
have female client partners. We have project leaders and analysts. We actually have, I didn't think about the ratio, but it's probably, I think we might have more women than men.
Well, we like that.
Yeah. So
No, that's
so
great.
I think you're seeing some longer term trends that do have a little bit more representation these days than perhaps in prior years.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's getting better, but we still have a long way to go. And I'm so proud to see that your organization is really making leaps and bounds and making
Mm.
sure that, women are as part of your leadership teams. And because, it's so important. And there's studies that show that, women manage and lead differently than
Yeah.
men with
Yeah.
more collaboration, more empathy, those types of things. So bringing that to your organization is so important. And also, your customers are diverse. So you want
Great.
a diverse workforce as well.
That's right. Absolutely. Yes, we absolutely want that diversity in our environment, and it is a way of getting those additional points of view and perspectives, and
Hmm.
it's also a way to relate to the customers themselves, right?
That's
And
right.
and yeah, so I think that certainly, we've never really thought of it as, oh, we need to have more women or fewer, whatever. but we've skills and
Yeah,
knowledge.
and that's exactly what you have to do. I do the
Mhm,
same thing. I don't hire more women or men or,
mhm,
I don't
right,
even think about it. It's a person who's skilled for the position. And
correct.
that's the most important thing. And that's why, I'm very focused because I'm in the training industry, focused on skilling more women in technology so that now
Mm,
they do take more leadership roles so that they have the skills when they come to the table. So
right.
really important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, having those opportunities are much broader than they used to be. I
Mhm.
think that, many times people would think that, oh, I'm especially women making career changes and wanting to try to get into technology, they might think, I don't have the training, or I don't have the undergraduate degree, or I don't, have computer science or whatever. But, so much of it is based on understanding processes and understanding business objectives and being able to communicate and being able to, articulate what the needs are and understand what those tools can do at a higher level, not at a, detail in the weeds, coding level necessarily, but at a level of how do people work with these systems and what process does it enable, and what are the capabilities that we're bringing to the business. And certainly, that means that it's a lot less of an onerous barrier to entry when you think
Mhm.
about technology today, right? It used to be you had to code so much more, and these days it's configuration. And
Mhm.
really, the hard work of coding is many times under the covers, but the harder or more important work is about that analysis and that understanding of the process and what the tools are actually going to do for the business. And then being able to communicate between different stakeholder groups. And again, having good communication skills, good collaboration abilities, and having more of that about sharing, or a little bit, more of an introvert or someone who doesn't have that, tendency to kind of step in and interpersonal relationship focus is really, I think, what's so critical these days in technology initiatives.
So true. And I'm so glad you mentioned about the coding because we always say in our show, and many, many women have said this as well, is that IT or technology is not only about coding. There are
Right,
so many jobs and job roles that
right,
are IT related that have nothing to do with coding. So you're so correct about, now we're going to low code and no code.
right.
So it is really behind the scenes more. So that's good.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
we are, obviously in certain places we're doing really well. Others, we need a lot of work still. So how can an ally support us? What are your thoughts?
So when I think about supporting women in any of these initiatives or environments, part of it is making sure their voices are heard.
Mm-hmm.
So enabling that space, because sometimes you get into these meetings and these conversations and these requirement sessions and business analysis sessions, and you get the most senior level person taking up all the space, right? Taking up all the air in the room,
Mm-hmm.
and many
Mm-hmm.
times other voices get drowned out. And if someone is a little bit reticent about sharing, or a little bit interrupt the conversation, when
Mm-hmm.
you actually have to do that, sometimes you have to stop people when they are going on and on. Uh, and it's helping that happen, it's facilitating that. Many times I'll be in a meeting, and if I hear that, if I observe that someone's voice isn't being heard, I love to watch people's faces on Zoom, because you can see the body language, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
see
Mm-hmm.
when people want to say something. They may not be raising their hand, but you can tell that they have something to add, and it's calling on those people, or
Mm-hmm.
giving them the space and saying, hey, I haven't heard from Jill. Jill, did you have something you wanted to add to this? So part of it is really just enabling the space, right? Providing the room to be heard in those situations. I think it's also being, open-minded about, the capabilities that different people bring to the table,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that you understand the position that people are in and what their objectives are. So part of it is empathy, part of it is good communication skills, part of it is, having an open mind and really kind of recognizing. I think a big problem is that, people believe there's a problem. You know what I mean? Or a lot of people don't believe there's a problem. You know, many people do believe there's a problem, but in certain situations, you know, it's like, you know, the old white guys networks, you know, are saying,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, what problem? What are you talking about?" You know, so it's
Right.
being aware that there are these issues, and you know, shining a light on them, and not being afraid to, you know, to identify when there's some type of a gap, whether it's, you know, a pay gap or a voice at the table or seat at the table, but recognizing that that these things need attention, right? And
That's
being
great.
open-minded to the change that needs to happen.
Yeah, that's so true. And you hit on some really, really important things, you know, to give them a voice at the table, because other views and other ideas can be very beneficial when one person's just taking over the meeting, or
Hmm.
two or three people that they've always ran the meeting and they have their ideas. It's always their own ideas. So
Yeah.
having more voices at the table gives you other views, other perspectives. It also creates an inclusive environment, which is really, really important. And I think, like you said, some people don't even know it's a problem, so they don't have that awareness. And it is very important to have that awareness. I know I was talking to a bunch of guys at a New York meeting a few months ago, and they were like, you know, we don't have time for this.
Hmm.
We just have to keep
Hmm.
going. We run
Right.
very fast, and I'm like, yes, but you have to make time. People
Right.
are important. People
Hmm.
are the relationships you build is going to be your future, you know? And
Yeah.
so we have to take time. We're all busy. And I know, you know, you run, you know, a mile a minute in New York, but
Right. Right.
it happens everywhere, you know? So it
Yeah.
is really important. So great, great points. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So I know you're the expert in the AI area. So tell us how AI is driving success without creating headaches for
Hmm.
organizations.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, everything comes with headaches,
Yes.
right? You know, especially technology deployments. And, you know, what's interesting about how AI has evolved, and I do consider it an evolution, is, you know, it's been around for a long time. You know,
Mhm.
the tools and the technologies and the algorithms have really been, you know, in development for decades. And, you know, search, for example, has always leveraged machine learning algorithms to do
Mhm.
clustering and identification of entities, and you know, understanding how documents are related, and doing the semantic analysis. That all has been machine learning, and it's happened for decades, right?
Mhm.
And in fact, you know, there's a lot of AI that's inherent in applications that we don't even think about. For
Mhm.
example, word processing was considered one of the first applications of artificial intelligence
Mhm.
because it took the expertise of a human, of a skilled typesetter, and it embedded that expertise into a program. And you don't really think about it, right? You don't say, "Oh, I'm going to use my AI to create this document," right?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
just use Word. And people used to say that, you know, no AI worked. By AI by definition doesn't work. As soon as it works, we call it something else, right? That was the old days. That was, you know, back in the you know, the turn of the 2000s, and but nowadays everything is AI. You know, every startup has AI, every vendor has AI, everything. And I say the first thing to think about AI is the first thing to consider around AI is to forget AI, right? And
Right.
focus on the business problem. And so, you know, when you look at what you're trying to accomplish in a business, you have lots of different processes that can be made more efficient. And it's not that you're going to take a human out of the equation, because you always need that judgment and that creativity and that problem solving and that expertise, but you can make humans more efficient and more productive. And, you know, AI is a tool that serves people, right? And again, you're not taking an entire process end to end and handing it over to an AI. You're taking pieces of that process and looking for
Mhm.
those areas where you can have an impact on the productivity and the efficiency of that process. So, you know, there may be manual steps. There's also opportunities to do things that humans can't do, because you just can't look at all that data. So, you know, analyzing hundreds of thousands or millions of transactions for anomalies, for fraud patterns, for, you know, customers that are going to defect or churn, right? I mean, those are things that the technology is very good at, because it can deal with massive amounts of information. But really, when you start thinking about what AI is doing, you know, part of it is making information easier to use. So people talk about cognitive AI, and that has it's a bit of a misnomer because cognition does not happen in these tools, right? They are not thinking, they're not aware, they're not sentient, there's no cognition happening. But what it does is it reduces the cognitive load on the human, right? Making it easier to find information. So when you personalize a website, you might use AI technologies or machine learning algorithms behind the scenes, but what the person sees is they see, oh, these are the products I need. And oh, here's some related products. And oh, I need these accessories. And oh, geez, here's another addition to this. And oh, this is very helpful. And oh, here's the documentation I need to do the installation or to troubleshoot or whatever. What you're doing is you're surfacing that information so that it is easier on human cognition, right? You're facilitating human cognition. And then we talk about things like chatbots and virtual assistants. And again, those are simply mechanisms to get to information, right? And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make that information consumable by these types of technologies, put it in the right format and structure, and then doing the process analysis to kind of enable it. So I think that's going to be a huge area of opportunity for business analysts and, robot trainers, right? To be able to train the technology to be able to handle human requests.
Wow, that's so important and so well said because, a lot of people think, oh, AI is going to replace people. And
Right.
really, it's doing the things that people can't do in the time frame that they need to do it and providing
Overwhelming.
them, yeah, and
Yeah,
providing them with the information in a manner that they can digest it and make decisions, educated decisions, which is so important. I
that's right.
love the way you explain that. That's great.
Okay.
Can you elaborate on why AI is not a significant change, but an incremental change in many parts of an organization? Because, people think, oh, AI, it's such a big change.
Right.
I'm coming
Right.
in and now everything's going to be different. But like you said, AI has been around for a long
Yes,
time.
that's
So
right.
tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So there's, I think when there was a lot of hype and inflated expectations and a lot of funding of startups and venture, money behind all these different initiatives. There was a lot more hype and a lot more, attention to these big bang projects, these moonshot projects, right? These things that were going to, MD Anderson Cancer Center was using Watson to cure cancer, right? And that was a big
Hmm.
top level headline that IBM put out in their commercials and MD Anderson put out. And guess what? It didn't work, right? Because
Hmm.
it's too big and too complex a problem. But guess what? They also had a number of other smaller successes that were able to contribute to the experience of patients and patient families. So little things like being able to find the right resources and being able to schedule appointments more easily, and really things that you think of as kind of routine, but they're problematic and there's still a lot of friction in those processes. And AI was able to help with that, right? So there were a lot of benefits and a lot of outputs, but it wasn't that big giant moonshot. And this is where organizations have learned their lessons, right? A colleague of mine at an insurance company said he didn't know of any companies his size that have not wasted $5 to $10 million on failed AI initiatives.
Hmm.
That was his perspective. He's like, everybody is throwing money at this, and many of them are failing. And the reason
Hmm.
why is because they did to try to do these things that were really, really big and really, ambitious. And it's fine to have that kind of big picture objective, but you really need to think, how do we get there? And tactically, how do we get there? So what I was saying before about enabling processes, it really can be incremental in a lot of
Hmm.
areas, right? We're adding a capability, we're improving a process, we're making it more efficient. You know, it's not necessarily that we're redesigning the entire organization end to end, but many digital transformations attempt to do that, right? They try to redesign all of those processes so that they are completely digital, and we remove unnecessary steps and we get rid of legacy systems and so on. But most of the time, there are many incremental process improvements that do add up to a larger transformation, but it takes time, right? It happens over a period of years because there's so much that needs to be put into place to make this work, including things like the right data and the right architecture, the right governance processes, the right understanding of the technologies and the tools, the application of those tools. It does take time. And I think organizations are getting better at calibrating what they're trying to accomplish and being realistic about that. And a big piece of this to me is measuring your results, right? Like what are your baselines, and then how do you measure incremental improvements? But yes, it's adding up to big changes in organizations, but it's from a lot of smaller improvements.
Yeah, I think of it as, everybody should think about it as crawl, walk, and then run. It's not go and you
Right.
start running. You have to
Yeah.
make sure that you know your foundations first. And
Right.
incremental steps is the best way to do it. So how do you invest smartly in AI technology to scale profits to 50%, 50 times and beyond?
Well, I would have a hard time saying you're going to get a 50x
Mm-hmm.
return, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a pretty ambitious number, and if people are claiming that, then I'd love to see the proof, right?
Yeah, it's
So
going to take years before you
it's
can
gonna,
even get there. Yep.
yeah, and think of it this way: you're talking about tools in a toolkit that are available to others, right? So, you're at a competitive landscape that is shifting, and the bar is being raised for everybody. So, it's great when you're first to the table and you can do this effectively, and you can, get much more value from your competition because you're ahead of the game. But
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes you can be too far ahead of the game, and you can make investments that don't pan out because the organization isn't ready or the market isn't ready or whatever. But the point is that, again, it comes back to really being focused on what process you're trying to enable. And in a digital transformation that a lot of organizations are going through, there's lots of processes that they're enabling, right? They're trying to redesign many things. So you have to pick and choose your battles and say, where can automation help us? Where can we
Mm-hmm.
improve the process? And I like to say, you can't automate a mess, and you can't automate what you don't understand.
Right.
So the first part of this is understanding those processes, and then understanding the capabilities of the tools, and then how those tools can fit into your particular process. Many times, AI vendors or technology vendors will say, well, here's what it looks like, and here's what you can do, and it's based on their demo data, or it's based on another client. That may not apply to you. You have to think about your processes, your data, your infrastructure, and understand your customer needs, not take this generic kind of, well, here's the process, or here's how it's been so successful in these other organizations. It really is specific to your enterprise and to your needs of both internal employees and external customers, right? Because an employee is your internal customer. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to think about it, and you can't have acts of heroics upstream and expect a seamless customer experience externally. So we really have to look at these information flows throughout the enterprise. And I like to say we speed up the information metabolism of the organization. We make it easier for everybody to get to that information they need, make the decisions more effectively and faster, and be able to get their output into somebody else's input faster and easier. You're removing friction from those processes. And so when you start looking at it holistically, and you start looking at those architectures across that information stack, that marketing stack, that customer experience stack, whatever, e-commerce, whatever it is, you can start to find those areas where you can remove a little bit of friction, and you can remove a little bit of inefficiency, and you can make it easier for all of the players. That's what you're trying to do with these initiatives. You're trying to look holistically and speed up those information flows internally and externally. And that is where organizations are going to start to see very significant returns. But a lot of them are still at the early stages of this.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a
Mm-hmm.
lot of aspirational functionality out there, right? People are
Right.
trying to do this stuff.
No, that's great. I mean, it's so smart the way you're presenting this, because it is really important. Of course, they're going to invest, but then they're going to look for a return. But it's
Right,
not tomorrow. It's going to
right.
take time. You're going to have to crawl, walk, run before you're going to get there. So that's
Mhm.
great.
And
So
the other
let's move
thing,
on.
Well, I
Mhm.
was just going to add one more point
Sure.
is that the other thing to think about is that you may have this grand vision, right, of where you're going. You may have that North Star, which is important. Vision is high level and it's not necessarily detailed, right, because it's a vision. But then
Mhm.
as you're building out the tactical execution plans, you have to have quick wins, right? You have to be able to show value as you go along that journey and not just wait for the end, right? So that's a
Right.
big thing that has to happen. And when you properly design these projects and these programs, you can build these, 12, 18-month, 24-month roadmaps that will show incremental value along the way. So just something to
Right.
keep in mind.
Right. No, very, very true. And you're going to see incremental return, but slowly as you go through it,
That's
but you
yeah.
will see some. So that's a really good point. So let's move a little bit to the personal side. So
Hmm.
as you've been in business 25 years, what's
Hmm.
one thing you wish you had known when you began your career that you know
Mhm.
now?
Hmm. Just one thing.
One thing. I know there's
Just
a
one thing.
zillion, right? I'm there
Um,
too.
I think I would have liked if I could go back and help my younger self in business. I think I would really try to impart the ability to trust my instincts, right, and to really look at other people. I think one of the challenges I've had over the years is, it's always a challenge to pick the right uh, leaders, right, and to
Mhm.
bring in the right
Mhm.
resources to help you grow the business. And, I've many times I just felt like I did not have the knowledge or expertise because I never had any experience in this business. Like
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
came into this business without having ever worked for anybody else or had any
Right.
form of
Right.
training. My undergraduate was chemistry. I had not worked for a consultancy. And so
Mhm.
many times I was looking to others to have the answer to bring the company to the next level. And I would ignore some of the signals that should have told me that, this wasn't the right choice. And so I didn't trust my gut. I didn't trust my
Yep.
instincts.
Yep.
And I would really impress upon myself to trust my instincts and to really, deconstruct what people are saying versus what they're doing, and to
Mhm.
really look at them from a much more of a balanced perspective, not just the logic and the words, but the actions and then the emotions, right? So it's really
Right.
trying to evaluate those people from that perspective, and not having not exercised um, that instinct to follow my
Mhm.
own gut
Mhm.
has been costly, and I certainly do it these days, but for a long time I didn't, and because I was
Yeah.
looking to others for that expertise, and really they didn't have it,
Right. No,
though
gut
they said they
feeling
had
is
it.
so important when you're running
Yeah,
a business. And
yeah,
I realized that also maybe later than I should have, but
yeah.
you depend on data and you depend on, just the conversations and you trust those things. And then in your gut, something's not right, but then
Hmm.
you fight it, and you
Yeah,
say, it's going to be
right,
okay because all these things add up and it doesn't.
right.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
right. So that's great,
And
great.
the critical piece here is there's a fine line to do something, to be different, to be a different business, to change your life, to change whatever. You have to get outside your comfort zone,
Mhm.
right? To be different, you have to do things differently, and you will not always be comfortable.
Right.
However, there's a fine line between being outside your comfort zone and going against your gut. And
Yes.
that's the
Yes.
challenge. It's like, when is this like, oh, I'm uncomfortable versus, oh, this isn't going to work, right? And
Right.
many times I confuse those. I was like, oh, I don't think this is going to work.
Easy to confuse. Yeah,
And it's
easy to
like, yeah,
confuse.
yeah, that line is very challenging, right?
No, great, great points. Yep. So who are three people that have been very
Mm,
influential to you throughout your
mhm,
career? Maybe mentors,
mhm,
maybe family, whatever.
mhm.
Who are three people that come to mind
Yeah.
that really set the foundation for you?
Well, part of it is, I maybe they weren't people that I interacted with, but they're people that I learned from.
Hmm. Hmm.
I got a lot of value over the years from reading a book that that I probably read every 5 years from the time I was a teenager. I'm due for another reading, but it's Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning,
Hmm.
and it's an incredible book. He was a concentration camp survivor, and he really studied what made people, what motivated people and what got them through these horrendous experiences. And,
Mhm.
it's always given me this kind of sense of no matter what you're going through, it's nothing compared to what other people have
Mhm.
suffered and gone through. And that you can, use your mind to kind of direct yourself and your energies and to get through adversity, right? So that was an important influence in my life. And another is a motivational speaker who I used to listen to when I was in my 20s. And I had projects in New Hampshire. I had these long drives, and I would put cassette tapes into my in my car that I would listen to. And his name is Brian Tracy. And
Oh, I know
so
Ryan. Yep.
yeah, he was popular many years ago, decades
Mhm.
ago, but just the ability to kind of retrain your brain and rethink things, and to guide your future by your thoughts, right? But
Mhm.
everything is based on your thoughts. Everything is
Right.
based on your mental model, and how you interact with the world is filtered by all of those thoughts, and your
Whatever you
future is
believe
only
happens, right?
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And your future is shaped by your thoughts, right? What you
Mhm.
think is going to become what is real, right? What you put your mind to. So it's really interesting. And then the other person is a man named Ken Wax, and he was a he worked for Lotus and IBM, or Lotus at the time, and he introduced me to Lotus Notes that in training and selling, and he was doing content marketing before there was content marketing. He'd say,
Mhm.
take an article and put it in an envelope, actually snail mail it to your prospect, give them value, send them something that's of interest to them, then they'll be receptive to your call. And that was literally in 1992 or
Yeah.
something like that, or
Yeah. Yeah.
1993. But I worked with him for a period of time. I learned a lot. He introduced me to a lot of stuff. He changed my signature because it was funny. I mean, if I look at how I wrote my signature, my name, it was an S, a script S, and I kind of opened it up to a to
Mhm.
a kind of a mixture of print and script. But it really did impact a lot of stuff. It's very interesting, something subtle like that.
Mm.
But he really helped me, reshape how I thought of myself and how I put myself forward in the world, and
Yes.
always be grateful for that.
No, that's great. I mean, we all need mentors, role models, motivational speakers, all of those
Mhm.
things to get us through to learn more and
That's right.
continuously learn so that we can grow. So that's great. So, Seth, this has been such an honor to have you. Your
Thank you.
insights and our conversations have been great. I could talk to you for another 2 hours.
Well, thank you for having
But
me.
in closing, what advice would you give to a woman considering a career in tech?
Yeah, I would say, don't be afraid of trying it, and don't be afraid of failure.
Right.
I like to say I failed my way to success.
That's great. Yeah.
It's always a matter of getting up and going to bat again. And it's
Mhm.
always a matter of, who says you fail, right? You don't
Right.
fail until you stop.
Right.
Right? You,
Right.
you keep getting up, and you have unlimited, ability to keep trying. And nobody can tell you you're not going to be able to do it unless you decide you're not going to do it, right? In other words, other people, don't worry about what other people say. I always encourage people to, realize their own value, and to go toward what they believe in passionately about, and to, realize that they have a lot of capabilities, they have a lot of abilities that they simply need to tap into. And there's many resources out there. There's many places where you can learn. There's networks that can help you. And try volunteering, right? If you want to make a career change, find something you care about, and find an organization. Say you want an unpaid internship, or you
Mhm.
want to do a pro bono project, or you want to, again, taking a course. There's a great learning place called the Center.
Mhm.
It's
Nice.
CENTERCENTRE or something like that, Jared Spool, and it's all about user experience and usability and information architecture. But there's lots of, I'm sure you have courses that can enable people. But it's a matter of getting a little bit of that training and then going out and applying it and finding someone who has a need where you can, get that experience and go in and build a portfolio for yourself to do that kind of work. And again, there's nothing holding you back from doing these types of things, right? If you think of any limitation or any obstacle, most of the time, those are artificial. Those are things in your mind, right? That's head trash. And there's nothing that is absolutely holding you back that you cannot overcome in one way, shape, or form. I've reinvented myself a number of times over the years, and I've had to, and I've done things that I've never done before, right?
Right.
And when people tell me, "Oh, we've never done that," I say, "Well, we never did anything." When I started this business without any experience and knowledge of the field, and have a company that has a really great reputation and is well known for this stuff. So anybody can achieve these objectives if they are clear about what they want to accomplish and they want to do the work. It's the work, right? It doesn't come for free, it doesn't come easy, but everything yields to persistence, right? Everything yields to persistence.
Nah, that's great advice. Great advice. And you said it, don't be afraid. You said that in the beginning.
Right.
And I think women need to hear that. Don't be afraid. It's confidence that will take you to that next step and the next step. And it's okay, keep going.
Or,
because like you said, failure is success.
Right. But is another opportunity for success. Or be afraid. You can be afraid, but do it anyway.
Yeah.
Don't let the fear stop you. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to fear failure. It's okay
because it's new, right?
And you might fail. Maybe you will fail, but who cares?
Right. No, that's such good advice. Great advice.
Nobody's going to care.
So Seth, can you share with our listeners how they can get a hold of you?
Oh, sure. You can send me an email, Seth, SETH, at Earley, EARLEY. Don't forget the E before the Y.com, just my first name at last name.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. So just do a search for Seth Earley. And again, it's EARLEY. And happy to connect. You can check out our website, www.earley.com, and be happy to chat with folks.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This was such an honor and such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for being an ally, and thank you for all that you do every day. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Tech in the Right Direction. Please take a minute to subscribe or follow so that you never miss an episode. Also, don't forget to like, share, and comment. Thank you. See you next week.
From IT skill enhancements to end-user adoption training, Directions Training is your resource to help optimize the effectiveness of your technology investments. Over 500,000 students have taken advantage of our wide selection of technology and business training solutions, covering the most popular applications today, such as Microsoft 365, Azure, Windows 10, and more. As a podcast listener, we invite you to take advantage of an exclusive offer. Receive 30 days of free access to our Microsoft official curriculum, on-demand courses for IT professionals or end users. Visit us at www.directionstraining.com/podcast to claim this offer today. Hurry, this offer is only available for a limited time. Success is a journey. Ask for directions.